Beyond Resilience is a series of curated conversations created by Firelight.
Beyond Resilience does a lot to keep people connected and keep people talking about films or talking about issues, connecting our filmmakers and other filmmakers together.
We wanted to create a space where our community, that is BIPOC documentary filmmakers, could lead a conversation.
We have to do a better job of knowing that films aren't just what we can physically see on the screen. It's about the people that put in the blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes.
Knowing that what you're so passionate about, someone looks at as unmarketable or niche. Who's the audience for this? Who's going to care about this, right? And those simple things that people say are like daggers to you.
I think that is the part of the violence of the model minority shit, that it like shaves away our history of resistance, of rebellion, of ferocity.
We have always resisted. We have always fought back in many different forms.
It's an evolving form. You have to evolve or not you will stagnate.
You have to have intention to change, and you have to understand that you're not changing to try to give anybody a gift, but you're changing so that you can do your job better.
What we're asking for is just proportional access, proportional resources, proportional marketing money, so that it does actually meet its mission, so that it does actually lean into the diversity of perspectives.
I hope that Beyond Resilience will keep its edge, will keep pushing the boundaries of the conversations that we need to have, and will keep growing its audiences, pulling in new people from the industry, outside the industry. It continues to be a space where people can have a BIPOC creator-led conversation. That is what it's about.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chloë Walters-Wallace, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Director of Regional Initiatives for Firelight Media. I'm really happy to have you all join us for today's Beyond Resilient event, the Black Movie House as Refuge. I am a Black woman with braids that are on the top of my head and a little bun with white earrings and a white top, and that's what I look like. I joined this event from Harlem on the land of Lenape and Canarsie people. At Firelight, we stand in solidarity with Indigenous people worldwide, and I like to remind our audience about Indigenous sovereignty and land rights. I encourage you to follow the link in the chat to learn about whose ancestral lands you are joining this event from. I also invite you to introduce yourself and share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. The conversation we'll have today, which is really exciting, with our incredible panel of BIPOC artists, curators, and executives, will allow us to focus not so much on films as on the critical exhibitors for those films, and specifically the challenges and opportunities they face in reaching communities of color. As Director of Regional Initiatives, I've had the pleasure of frequently visiting filmmaking communities across the US and its territories, and supporting documentary filmmakers who live and work outside of the poles. I call them the film industry poles of LA and New York. In doing this work, I really get to experience incredible movie theaters who are often our partners, often support those filmmakers on the ground, film organizations and exhibition halls that exist in cities and towns across the US and whose spaces and programs are vital to their local communities and to us as a national organization. For as much as we discuss the contraction of storytelling opportunities for BIPOC makers, a similar contraction is happening in the world of film exhibition, particularly in rural America. Fewer and fewer community theaters are surviving in the streaming era. Funders are increasingly focused on the story itself and less on the mode of distribution for that story. And there's a growing disconnect between filmmakers and the physical spaces to showcase their films to live audiences. We hope that today's conversation helps to paint a more detailed picture of the exhibition landscape for nonfiction cinema, so that we can work together to strengthen this infrastructure, not just for our films, but for our communities and our audiences at large. A big thank you to our ASL interpreter, Andrea Lust, to Jean-Pierre Regis, our series producer, and to Justin Sherwood, our communications director, for putting together this incredible time. For closed caption services, please see the lower right-hand corner of your YouTube screen. And as always, thank you to our ongoing Beyond Resilience series reporters, including supporters, including Open Society Foundations, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the National Endowment for the Arts, and Field of Vision for making these conversations possible. You can support the Beyond Resilience series and conversations like this by making a tax-deductible donation via the link in the chat. Well, now I'm really, really excited to pass this on to our moderator for this conversation, Jessica Green, who, beyond working as an impact producer for a host of films, is also a dynamic film curator for BAM and the Museum of the City of New York, and recently served as the artistic director of the Houston Cinema Arts Festival. For more on Jessica, please see the chat below, and for an extended bio, visit Firelight's website at firelightmedia.tv. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks so much, Chloe. So happy to be here. So excited and been excited about this conversation for months. I am Jessica Green. I am a Black woman with short brown hair, and I'm wearing a sleeveless peach top. So I would like to start by introducing the panelists that are joining us today, which it is like some of my favorite people in the entire world. So with us today, we have Harrison Guy, the Director of Arts and Culture at the DeLuxe Theater in Houston, Texas. We also have Curtis Caesar John, the founder and executive director of the Luminal Theater in Columbia, South Carolina. And last but not least, Melissa Lyde, the founder of Alfreda Cinema in Brooklyn, New York. And there is more information about Harrison, Curtis, and Melissa in the chat, information about their organizations, their bios, and there's going to be more information about other Black programming organizations and exhibition projects around the country. So let's jump into it. Let's chop it up. Let's get right to it. I'm going to start with a question for all y'all, and then we're going to get into some individual questions, and then we'll close with some questions from the audience. So the first question for everybody, and anybody can start, and please, do identify yourself, is most film-related grants and funders focus on filmmakers. What is the case you can make for the power of Black exhibition and Black-centric, exhibitors, and the value of Black-centric and Black-led and Black-owned exhibition, the value in the larger ecosystem? Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and its value in the larger film ecosystem? And let's, why don't we start with Curtis? Curtis, could you start?
Sure, that's not a problem. My name is Curtis Caesar John. Good to be here with you all. I am a dark-skinned Black man wearing glasses, and I'm wearing a Black t-shirt with the Luminal star logo on it. I have dreadlocks, Black dreadlocks that are a little past my shoulders. And I have a huge She's Gotta Have It, French version, She's Gotta Have It poster in my background, which is always fun to have. We've been making that case about funding for film organizations for a while now. The Luminal is now, but it hasn't always been a not-for-profit organization. But even before we were, the case really was all about, extended from the work that I've done and our partners and our everyone that's involved in Luminal has done for a number of years now, is in really being that middle set of people for Black audiences and Black filmmakers. We're a unique organization in that we do that pretty equally, which is a lot of work, but it's been worth it for us because it's really about, trying to bridge that divide and number one, having access to the work of outstanding, but then also up and coming, all breadths of Black independent filmmakers whose work beyond the film festival. A lot of times these filmmakers' works don't get beyond film festivals, which is in some ways fine, but in other ways, it's like you want these filmmakers to find audiences that they're seeking. Most filmmakers, most Black filmmakers, I can speak for them in this regard, even though I'll never work fully, in that, a lot of times they make their films from a Black experience, and in a lot of ways then for Black audiences. And so that's the case we often make, is that, we are able to provide access to each of these communities, access to the filmmakers, and then access also to these audiences who are like clamoring for these stories but just cannot find them. I'll just wrap up that question and say, like, unfortunately, even to this day, there are a lot of film festivals, usually the non-Black ones, the non-TLC, BIPOC ones, that a lot of audience members don't feel comfortable going to still. And I could say, and maybe Harrison can expound upon this being in Texas, but I can say, especially since we moved to the South, we moved our operations to the South. Luminal was actually originally in Brooklyn, New York. We find that we already knew that was the case, but we found that to be even more prevalent, which makes sense in the North and in the South and everywhere in the United States, because a lot of times Black folks are saying welcome in a lot of places. And so by extension, a lot of those places that, art houses are, from that art house perspective, don't always speak to our audiences. And so it's a matter of trust. And so we're able to help provide that trust. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Curtis. Melissa, could you address this question of supporting and funding Black exhibition spaces and nomadic programming organizations, some of the work that you're doing with Alfreda Cinema, the value of that in the larger ecosystem, and how this really supports filmmakers themselves?
Well, thanks for having me. And it's such a pleasure to be here with everyone, including everyone in the virtual sphere. My name is Melissa Lyde, and I'm the founder of Alfreda Cinema. I'm also a Black woman, and I also have locks. And I'm in Brooklyn, New York, in a my living room. But thank you for the question, Jess. Jess is a mentor, so shout out and thanks for having me. I feel like we really do hold, for me, I guess the ultimate, what I'm ultimately saying is that we need safety. We need healthy experiences, and we need healthy places to really showcase and share our stories. So I feel like that's what Alfreda Cinema ultimately provides. I mean, I love to begin each Q&A with, this is a safe space. And I don't think people realize that that is, still hard to find within the exhibition sphere. So many of us, especially us exhibitors, we've already ventured into these film festivals, these theaters, and a lot of the welcoming is, what are you doing here? Or you just don't get to see the people who look like you. Often enough, they might be showing a Black film, and you're not surrounded by Black people watching it. So, something is missing. There's a link missing there. And to speak to, how do we advocate for ourselves in this funding space? And why that's so important. I believe that was part of the question, right? I think it's for me, it's mainly about preservation, and as someone who is sort of roving, so I'm like in multiple spaces at often enough. But as we're advocating for our own space and raising funding for that, what we're telling people is that, space means value. Space means that there is a home, there's a foundation, and it's hard to get past that, even in the foundational or the mobile sense. We want people to know that because you can find these films here, these films are valuable, and it means that you're valuable because you look like what is on the screen. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's what I'm saying, and that's why it's so important that myself and so many Curtis, I'm sorry, I forgot shit, but brother down in Houston, it's why we're doing what we do. It's basically telling our audiences that you're important because, you get to see your stories. But that's me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Curtis and Melissa. Harrison, I want to ask you the same question. I'm going to pivot to a DeLuxe specific question, but can you talk a little bit about, funding for DeLuxe's, film exhibition and just the importance of what you're doing in Houston to the, around the independent Black filmmaking space and how critical it is to support projects like DeLuxe. And then I have a follow-up question, but if you could answer that, and thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. And I'm Harrison Guy, Director of Arts and Culture for the Fifth Ward Cultural Arts District. I'm a Black man with a little hair on the top, more than on the sides, wearing a Black t-shirt in my office with a gallery style wall behind me. So the DeLuxe Theater, it's in its kind of renovation stage. It was brought back to life in 2015. It was originally opened in 1949 as a film house and kind of has a legacy of being a Black film house, has been renovated now to be a multi-use space. So we can do all kinds of things, but it's very important to me that we take it back to its original state of a movie house and making sure that the film community feels like this is their space, even though it's the space to many people now. But I will say that I think that funding wise, a case that I would like to make is I do think it matters where you see film. And oftentimes there's this sense of gratitude that is offered to Black filmmakers, Black artists, that you should just be grateful is shown, right? But I think that when you see a Black film in a Black space, you don't have to worry if the content fits the space, right? You don't have to worry. If you see a love story, you can feel the hug in the room, right? And if you see a story that is about racism, you feel comfortable in that content. And so I do advocate for where you see films matter. Oftentimes there are screen spaces where you might see a Black film and then walk out and encounter racism, right? Because it's another film being shown that is not a Black film. It is not a Black audience. So there is a level of safety, but there's also a level of care that comes from seeing films in these spaces like that. And probably the last point I'll make is that the DeLuxe Theater is in a Black community. And so beyond that, it is access to the community first. People can walk to see a film here. And so that opens up the door to talking about, accessibility with seeing films. And so I think that it's very nuanced. It has a lot of layers. But I do think that my case that I make oftentimes when I'm talking about funding is that it does matter where you see the film.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Harrison. And that actually dovetails on what I wanted to ask you about next. So the DeLuxe is in a Black community. It's in a historic Black community. It's in the Fifth Ward. I know during time that I've spent in Houston, I came into contact with folks that, like, in their lives for the first time, Black folks saw Black actors and performers and singers and dancers and musicians on screen for the first time at the DeLuxe, like in the 1950s and the 1960s during segregation. Could you speak a little bit about that? It's almost like full circle. And now y'all have just installed DCP equipment, correct? So now you have...
Yeah, DCP is being installed like right now.
Right now. So now you have state-of-the-art equipment, right? And could show film at any level, compete with any theater. Can you talk a bit about that reclamation and that kind of full circle experience and movement? And also just about how what we're talking about is a bit everything old is new again, that there is this tradition, right? This tradition of Black film houses that go back to the beginning of cinema, that go back to Oscar Micheaux. There had to be Black cinema houses for filmmakers like Micheaux to have their work shown in the first place. Could you speak a little bit about that, the legacy of DeLuxe and the work you're doing now?
Yeah, I'm so excited that the space, I get no credit for this because it's happened before I got here, but they renovated the space. It had sat vacant for years and they renovated it back to keep its original floor plan. So it still looks exactly like it did when it opened in 1949. The community then has this nostalgia. When people come, they will say, I worked the projector, back in the 50s or 60s, or I was a ticket girl, back in the 50s and 60s. So we love that it was brought back to life and caring about the nostalgia and caring about not just giving a new shiny thing, but it is new and shiny and it is also old. And so I think taking it back to its original, film kind of, I will say that for Houston, I think film is one of the last kind of mediums I think that gets attention until you see the film. And so it's a really big struggle. And, dance people can imagine. Music is really thriving. Visual art is just, don't even get me started on how well-funded visual arts is. But film is something that I have seen people don't really connect to it until they have the finished product in front of them. And so it's really been our mission here to really bolster the crafting process and everything that goes into making the film and getting people to understand all the layers that is there, so they're just not waiting on a finished product. I also think people attribute to, with this particular medium, I learned that our community, everyone sees films, right? So it's something that everyone kind of knows a little bit about, and it's a little different. Everything else has a level of expertise, I think, that's clear. You're a dancer, you're a singer, I don't do that. But film is like, oh, I know film, I go to movies. And so it's been a little bit of an education also to bridge that gap, I think. But I think reclaiming it and putting that stake in the ground that says, this is a space for Black films, this is a space for Black filmmakers, has really been something that the community has really come to love. And we made a film and we show the film here all the time. And so that is really special. It is a film about the community, shown in the community. People can see people they know in the film. And so that kind of brought it home, I think, for the people of the community.
Can you share the title of that film? And is there any way folks can check it out?
Sure. It is on BET Plus right now. It is called Memory Builds the Monument. And what I love most about the film is it was a community project. It was funded through community grants. It started out as just the community wanted to honor the legacy of our Club Matinee, which was a Chitlin Circuit live music venue that was across the street from the DeLuxe Theater. That, of course, is no longer here anymore. But the community wanted to honor it in a way and bring it back to life. And we thought it was going to be like a pop-up temporary, but someone's like, why don't we do a film? And I'm like, okay. So we took a learning curve to learning about filmmaking and got a really great director from the community to direct the film. And because we just wanted the community to love it, right? But that's a high bar. That's a very high bar, is that you want the people who live here to love it. So that meant that we got to actually have a really dope film that we got to show.
Melissa, this is a question for you, and I'm going to ask everybody else this too. What are the challenges to expanding your programming?
Expanding in a sense of like just being available in multiple locations, or expanding in a sense of finding a home for ourselves. I guess growth as a small business.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, this question actually leads into a very specific question for you. So we'll just put this all together. Like what is the ultimate vision for Alfreda Cinema? And, how is that going? And what are the challenges to that, seeing through that vision and kind of like making what you do scalable, being able to make it like scalable and sustainable, I guess, both on the nomadic tip, but also your plans around building a space. And lastly, who is Alfreda and who is Alfreda Cinema named for?
Yeah, actually, that's it's named after my grandmother, great grandmother, and we both share the name actually. Alfreda, her original name was Alfreda, and she changed it to Alfreda. I don't know why. I have to ask my mom that question, but it's just a name that feels so homely, but also feels like a Black woman. You can't get around that, and I just felt it was important to honor not only Black women in film, but the people. My grandmother, my great grandmother, she used to clean the floors at NBC Studios, so. In some way, I kind of think that maybe she wanted to be, show within, that the business of Hollywood sort of adjacent, and these people couldn't really cross that threshold. So I really just wanted to honor the fabulation and ambitions I've given to her, just by naming it that. But yeah, my vision is really, to see this community space thriving within a Black community. We're working towards opening a space in Brownsville. Of course, I'm open to, locations specifically in Black neighborhoods here in Brooklyn, and to really just, be, again, a healthy place, a sustainable place that looks like, a real layover, a place of rest and solitude and refuge. If you don't mind, I use that word too, because, the city life, it becomes a lot, you just kind of, and that's what film exhibition houses are for, to escape those moments of chaos. And there's a lot of that in the Black community. So, to really honor this ecstatic rest is what a lot of people have kind of coined it, and to just give space to preserving our culture ultimately. So that's the vision I see. Physically, the vision I see, a micro cinema that kind of operates in a really healthy way, as well as offering snacks that are kind of health conscious, maybe even like a herb garden, so the community could kind of take away. And I love music too, so I would love to have like music implemented in this space somehow. So really a space that can adjust to the community arts and visual arts, but and primarily, preserve our history through film. I feel like I got all of the answers in there. If there's any other questions that I might have missed.
Yeah, no, you did answer. And yeah, Melissa is an incredible DJ, also a woman of many talents. So, and you've been able to like really do amazing work at the intersection of like DJing and film programming, and actually like DJ your own programs, which is such an incredible skill to have.
I hosted an event in December at Light Industry, and we really spoke to the language of Sarah Maduro's love for music. She was such a jazz fan, so we layered that in with different music that she had used to score her many films, and it was really just a moment to honor her, just as an incredible filmmaker. So yeah, music is important. For me, I love New York is all about nightlife, and film cinema going is a part of that nightlife experience. And I really would love to see cinema, an exhibition going like for the audience as vivacious as going to the nightclub. Like that would be wonderful.
Yeah. And I love that in the correct pronunciation of your organization, which I will make sure I do from now on, the word free is in there. So that's kind of nice too, for sure, contained within. Could you just like share though about what are the challenges that you would share that come up in making this transition from a nomadic programming organization to developing a space, and how folks that are part of this conversation that we're having now can support your efforts?
I think the challenges are largely in that, as I'm pursuing something obviously niche and in a way boutique, and really it might feel like it's paying close attention to a specific audience. But we really are here for everyone who wants to learn about us, from us, you know what I mean? So, and our audience's reach is wide a range as any other. It's really not specific just to Black people, but of course, I'm going to acknowledge that this is for Black people, Black and brown people, because we haven't had anything like this for us, at least in this century. That's been long lasting. And the hardships go in the fact that, these are, and as we're at our funding in terms of crowdsourcing and looking for grants and everything like that. I don't come from a place with generational wealth, so I'm pretty much starting from square one. It's harder, but we're trying to be as expanded as possible in multiple spaces, just, out here really advocating for ourselves. And it does take a toll, you get tired. And I don't always get a grant but it takes sometimes weeks to work on this thing. So that the hardship is just, I think, ultimately in being a solo act right now. And I look forward to being, within an active sort of, employee volunteership base. But I do feel like maybe, some people just feel neglected and they don't want to help us in that space. And I just want to say, you're not, it's okay to learn about something that you don't necessarily look like. So really just, I think people feel like maybe, it's harder to take a chance on a Black woman owned and operated institution, for whatever reasons, but this is America. So, it is what it is, but it's not going to stop me, from accomplishing my goals. I'm just going to keep it on.
No, it is not going to keep you from accomplishing your goals. That I think, what is it, less than 0.1% of venture capital goes to Black women-owned businesses, but we are not going to let that get in the way of you accomplishing your goals, for sure. And you do have a vision, and it's incredible, and I for one, completely believe in it. Curtis, could you share about both the challenges to expanding Luminal programming, and especially around, could you talk a little bit about the work you do around both like in-person programming in Columbia, South Carolina, at other venues, programming you do at your actual venue that you have in Columbia, South Carolina? Can you talk to the audience a little bit about that venue, and then the place of virtual programming in that ecosystem? Because you do all three, right? And then I think you also do programming around the country, in person and virtually. So could you talk a little bit about challenges and expanding that, and just really speak about the flow between the online stuff you're doing, the in-person stuff, and especially around the space you have in Columbia?
Well, so to be even more specific, like the space we have is more of an outdoor open space. We, from very early stage in the Luminal's creation, we've centered on outdoor screenings, really specifically as a way to provide open access, literal open access to audiences, and to have them be a little less afraid of experiencing the films we show. Not that there's anything scary about them, but like everyone has been speaking about it, it's sometimes there's still some type of stigma from ex-audiences, including our own audiences, about the independent films, the Black films that we show. So, but our outdoor space is, on a horse farm that my wife and I own, and I can envision this. So we show films on the stars. There's cicadas in the background at this time of year. There's nice darkness enveloping us. There's only one little street light because it's a semi-rural area. And this is very much in our lifeblood as well. To like what Melissa was saying earlier, we're always about, no matter where we are, whether we're doing it on the farm, whether we're showing films in a rented semi-independent space here in Columbia, whether we're traveling up and down the Eastern Seaboard with different series, like our Fresh Black Film series that's still running now. We're always about creating that safe space for everyone. And it is one of the things we also do say pretty often, but especially like here when we do stuff on the farm here, for our audiences. And so I would say that with the expansion of, I don't know how much more we need to expand beyond that. Honestly, we're pretty expanded. We're a little bit at our limits, honestly, with those 3 to 4 different models. We've actually cut back a bit on our virtual, but we have our film series that we do virtually monthly. And that's basically, we have different films either that we make available on X platforms that we partner with, and people within our film club are able to experience our films in that way. So those are mostly, obviously, like sometimes somewhat newer films, but mostly older films. Like this month we're showing the films Madeline Anderson, and our director of special projects, Jackie Brown, runs that series. So I would say, I guess about the flow, it's really just, we maintain like a pretty detailed calendar, and work with different partners to make sure that we're not we're not us spreading ourselves a little too thin. So we might be like in X city, 1 week and then another week, but then we're here in Columbia, either doing something or planning for like over a month. And so it's really just about having like that long-term envisioning and planning and being able to pivot to X thing to be able to put on whatever type of programming we want to around Black cinema.
And do you have plans for expanding what you're doing at the outdoor space? What is kind of the long-term vision of how you want to use that around film exhibition?
Yes and no. We have different things that we've done. So in late 2020, we partnered with a movie house who wasn't able to be open for obvious reasons to do a drive-in. We showed 3 different drive-in films. So we had a short film from a local filmmaker, and then we did a popular film like Last Dragon or The Wiz that we showed at those spaces. So it's really just about also making sure that we do these in majority Black spaces, even with whenever we travel different cities. For the most part, if we can try to either get a space that is either in a obviously community that's safe for us or literally in our community, literally in a Black or majority Black community, that's really obviously important to us because it's, the Blackness is not just about what you're seeing on screen, although obviously that's key, but it's also about, where we're experiencing these films. And so I would say it's really just about expanding it. If there is any expansion, and there is at certain points, it's really just about what is our focus for this year and a half? Are we able to get funding to do this in the right way, especially for marketing purposes? A decent amount of our funding goes toward marketing because it's, you really got to reach the people. And not to say that, depending on the program, if we have one like on the farm, we can't have 70 people there. So it's fine if we have 15, to be totally honest, sometimes we've only had like 7 or 10. And that's fine because it's the people who want to be there are the people who are going to be there, but we're 2 hours from Charleston. We've had a couple drive in from Charleston to watch The Preacher's Wife. We show The Preacher's Wife every holiday season. We had a couple drive in from Charleston because you would think in a city like Charleston that people will be able to find or experience like a Black film setting, but they're not. And I know from people in Charleston that that is seldom the case, And so, yeah, it's about being able to have the people there who want to experience the type of thing that we do and ensure that, they are welcome and they are home once they're here. And that they, enjoy themselves. It's not, and they're able to have like a discussion. And, for us, I mean, not so much about the film like The Preacher's Wife, although we do talk about that after too, but, discussion is just as important as the film that we show. And so for us to even have a 5-minute conversation about the film and aspects of it and blah, 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 is really key and important to us. And we have to be able to work with a space, with a partner that's going to allow us to do so, if we don't have even a half-hour conversation or an hour-long conversation. That's the great thing about, I'm sorry not to be too long, but that is the one great thing about having the space is that, and we have, is that we can have an hour-long conversation without anybody saying, we got to kick you off the next film, yada, 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 right?
Right.
So.
Right. You're able to facilitate some real deep community building without having to have the kind of pressure of the kind of commercial concerns that might exist otherwise, that you could only have a 15-minute conversation because you have to move on to the next thing. I'm
sorry. I just want to say that it's also because it's also really about creating community.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah. No, totally. So yeah, to pivot a bit and focus on, some key players in this community, I want to ask all of y'all, how far in advance, and let's start with Melissa, how far in advance do you work with filmmakers on programming, and how do you work with them around a community engagement plan they may have, or an impact plan they may have, a vision of how they want to engage community? Melissa, let's start with you.
So I do have the luxury of discovering filmmakers largely on social media. And yes, that is my secret to the, secret sauce. But so, and it's not really a matter of how much time ahead. It's really sort of based or surrounded on a particular theme that I want to, approach with a different, with each programming rather. So it could be, sliding into the DMs, just saying, hey, I saw you have a film, can I check it out? And if it kind of speaks to like, say, an upcoming program or some idea that I had, then we'll probably start rapping, as they say, and making it happen. But I think did I answer that question? And what was the other part? I'm sorry.
If they have a vision around community engagement and impact, like how do you kind of work with them to support that?
Oh, totally. Thank you so much. Yeah, a lot of the filmmakers and it's also people who do come to me as well. They respect what we have going on. They know that there is a degree of skill and artistry as part of being a, Alfreda cinema filmmaker. And they want to be a part of that community, essentially. They want to reach our audience who we've had for the last 10 years on social media, who are now really dedicated to our sort of language in experimental cinema or repertory films. And they want to be within that class of artists. They definitely want their work, I think, to feel exceptional. And I'm, so fortunate that that is sort of the reputation we have built. So in terms of working with different filmmakers and their intentions, I think that they know very well that their films will be watched by an audience that looks like them, that whatever their film is about, it'll be seen by the people who inspired it. So yeah, that's kind of the impact that we collectively work towards.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Harrison, could you answer that question and maybe also speak a little bit to the role of partnerships around that, around working with filmmakers? You have some partnerships with film programming organizations, right? And cultural institutions in Houston. And if you could speak about how you work with filmmakers around, a kind of community engagement vision they have, and how you work with different partners also to support filmmakers around their community-driven vision.
For sure. Yeah, I think, being housed in a community it definitely brings a lot of opportunity and ideas to the forefront that are community specific. So I think the thing that comes to mind the most is that being adaptive in the approach of community engagement, because first of all, community is all over the place, and it can be a very nuanced and messy thing to navigate. So we might have someone bringing a film that's supported at a high level from like a Netflix, right? All the way down to someone that just has this dream. And so being adaptive to be able to be something that takes 4 months of planning, but something that's like, I just got to strike while the iron's hot. We get a lot of people who are quick fire ideas. And so being flexible enough and adaptive enough and supporting them through when it is quick, like this is doing something quick in communities to get the result, you need to do this, this, and this, to give them that kind of blueprint so that they aren't wasting their time and they aren't going to experience the failures that would exist. We see ourselves as a liaison for that and helping to support that. And so I think being adaptive and flexible for what meets the need is what comes to mind for me, community engagement wise. But certainly we're like I said before, film is not my background, and we're coming back to being a film space. So we needed partners to figure out how to do this. So we have the Houston Cinema Arts Society that is our lead partner with filming. They helped us to do the fundraising for the projector. They program here a lot. They have an annual festival that they do several films here that make sense for this space. They do here. And also the Houston Museum for African American Culture is another film partner that we have that also shows film and does community engagement here. And without those partners, we really wouldn't be able to do this. We needed people that are really experts, in the field, and this is really their lane. So having those partners was essential to us being able to do this not only well, but to do it on a quicker scale, because we were able to kind of miss a bunch of hurdles that we probably would have encountered without being in the industry and understanding it. So yeah, those partnerships were key and vital and remain vital to, I think, the success of this coming back to being a film space.
Definitely, definitely. And, some of the support from places like Netflix can help underwrite some of these more community-oriented and driven and, initiatives. And that's exciting too. I'm going to ask one more filmmaker focused question, and then we're going to pivot to some audience questions. So the question is, what are the challenges that filmmakers are sharing with y'all about the challenges as around distributing their films, getting their films out there? What are the kind of challenges that filmmakers are sharing with you around distribution of their films? Harrison, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll go on to everybody else since you're already there.
Yeah, no worries. So I think ours is probably one that is, probably a constant for all things, and it's really funding and getting support. That remains a barrier. I learned very early on when we did our first film, I was so excited to tell the director our budget. He's like, "Oh, we got a micro grant." I'm like, "Micro?" I'm like, in my world, that's a lot of money. But I learned very early on that to make a film well, it can require a lot of funding. And so I think funding remains, and how do you get that funding, has remained the constant conversation that we're having. Because now it was space and funding, and now that we have space, funding is the one that we're still trying to figure out.
And Curtis and Melissa, we'll start with Curtis. What are the challenges that filmmakers are sharing with you about, distribution, getting their work out there?
I'll start just to expand a little on what Harrison said. It's definitely the money. That's always the case. It's also access to distributors. But then it's also, really learning how to build a relationship with them, which is the most difficult thing. I mean, even when you get access, because I'm sorry, let me backtrack a little. I think it's the main thing is that I don't think, especially coming out of the ones that go to film school, now they are being taught a little bit more so, but it's really about, sometimes setting like realistic expectations around how your film can actually get onto the market if you wanted to try to get onto the market through a big distributor, through a big streamer or such. A lot of filmmakers, and I'm not saying they should need to be negative and they should support their film and all those things, right? Because they believe in it, but I think they also need to, a lot of times come into their film, especially if it's the first feature, thinking that it's going to get on all these platforms. And then even if it does, this is probably the biggest thing. If it does get on a platform, what type of money they're going to recoup from it? What kind of contract are they going to get from it? That's actually the biggest hurdle, is because, yes, sometimes they do get on X platforms, X big, semi-big ones, but then, they're getting pennies on the penny of the dollar, for their work being shown on there, and it gets less every year. And so I would actually say that's the biggest thing, is really learning how to, is getting on those platforms even worth it? Because it might not be, and it might be worth it for you to do the work and self-distribute or help find somebody to help you do so.
Yeah. Thank you, Curtis. Melissa?
I guess I will say most of the filmmakers I speak to who are often my age, around my age, they really have no idea, how to what distribution is, or like really this side of the business. So we're pretty much starting from scratch with that. And then coupled with the fact that sometimes their work isn't going to be shown by by an independent film house that is largely operated in a white space, or ran by a white programmer, and then adding in the fact that their film might be shown out of context, so the audience might not even get that. And that's also speaking to the importance of a Black programmer in these spaces, because you really get to understand the the breadth of the meaning behind the work that you're seeing, the cultural context. So, and then of course, just want to echo the fact that, what Curtis just said as far as, the revenue from streaming. I feel like streaming is essentially, sending your film off to the cemetery. Because I don't think it's going to get platformed. It's going to reach the algorithm, and it probably won't even get seen. So it's I can't really offer a solution to that, and I know that's not the question, but we really do need to reinforce and help to support Black owned cultural art spaces, because that's how your film is going to be seen. That's the reality.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Melissa. And actually, what you just said and Curtis said is a good lead into the first of a couple of audience questions. But very quickly before that, I want to just note also, in terms of what you just said, I just want to note for everybody that's part of this conversation, for the audience, that all of this work that this group of incredible humans are doing, these are all examples of creative placemaking, right? They're really powerful examples, and that is a very important thing to be doing. These are individuals and their organizations and the people that they work with, their teams, are really creating sites of community, are really creating sites of resistance, of community building. There are ways in which what they're doing helps other things flourish around them, and other sites of resistance and community are created. Also, as we have more kind of art centers and space, I'm really excited about what Melissa is going to do in Brooklyn. I'm really excited about what Curtis is already doing in Columbia, South Carolina, and what Harrison is already doing in Houston, Texas. These are really, really important, vital spaces for our communities, especially in this moment, especially in this time when people can be very alienated, can be very virtualized, very atomized, right? As is talked about, these kind of projects are so critical and so important. It is so important that we come together and in these spaces and build community. So I just want to shout these projects out as exemplary examples of creative placemaking, of examples of third places, right? Places that are not your home, are not your job. Third places are really important. They're really important sites of community. So just wanted to add that note. So with that in mind, question from Yania, and this kind of dovetails off of what you all were just saying. So you talked a little bit about the challenges for filmmakers. What do you all see? What do you envision as, the direction, or what do you hope for around the direction for Black indie film, TV, and media? Especially in the context of impact producing and distribution. What do you hope for the future of Black indie filmmaking? What do you envision? Could each of you talk a little bit about that? Let's start with Harrison this time.
Yeah, so I'm probably like way thinking way before distribution and things like that. But something I really think would be helpful is like what Melissa was saying, starting from scratch with a lot of these things. I think it's a lack of education and a lack of access to know how these things work, and finding out about it way late in the game. So I would love to see an education component that really, we talk a lot about bringing the youth into the space to learn about filmmaking, to learn about distribution, to know all the parts of it, pulling it apart. Getting them to know that sooner, I think, is very helpful. So I'm gonna answer for the youth and say getting that information to young people a lot sooner, I think, will help to grow the industry in a better way.
Curtis?
Yeah, I actually have to fully agree with Harrison on that, not to sound like a politician, but yeah, it's funny, like I know, thankfully, a number of, especially here in this Columbia area, like a number of educators, Black educators to be more specific, who are teaching media, and or kind of like doing what I said before, like teaching these young students who are interested in filmmaking, or more so interested in telling their own stories, how to really navigate the process. So I think that's really one of the more interesting and fun things I'm seeing that's coming out of, in modern times, where people are really reaching folks earlier to understand how to go about this process, and what the stakes really are in how to present your own image of yourself. I think the whole social media, the expansion of social media has helped exacerbate, I guess, the need to do that. But I think in a lot of ways that's been a helpful thing. As negative as that could be, the fact that people are recognizing that you should be able to tell your own stories in X way, that's non-exploitative, that's honest to you and to your culture, is a really key thing that I see is happening in a lot of the films that we're also showing.
Thank you. So Melissa, you talked about the problem of streaming and it kind of being a dead end. You know, what do you see as like a, you know, a productive kind of model in future, or what do you think is part of that?
Yeah, so I think it's really hard to say because when just in terms of seeing it, you know, where it is now, and you know, it's hard to kind of give a solution or a better situation, better circumstance, because you know we've tried, and there are Black owned, you know, streaming platforms, and they exist and they flourish. What I'm trying to say. They thrive essentially. And they do offer a very diverse, expanded like content platform. But you know, I really think that we have to again just make film going exciting. You know, we just there has to be more offered for the audience, because we are fighting this this diminishing attention span. And then being in New York, there's so much to do at all times, you know. So I think adding in a specialty program, a live performance, some comedy, you know, making it more about the cultural arts, I think, than just the one-dimensional aspect in which is film. So for me, I really just want people to be more engaged together. You know, it's about a community conversation. And I don't feel like streaming allows that. I don't feel like you as a filmmaker made the film, you know, to be seen on a streaming platform. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. I just think that the work should allow conversation. So.
Right. That dynamism and that range, as like, that's part of the future, being super dynamic. We're very close to the end here. One more question, and I'm going to ask that I think probably just one or two people are going to be able to answer. This is from Rochelle. Black cultural spaces often face recurrent struggles. Why do you think that is? And what support is needed for sustainability? Does Black philanthropy play a role, and how can it have a bigger impact? Anyone want to jump in on that? The sustainability of Black spaces. Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
I'll just say that, you know, I like to look at Black spaces as like, in a way, developing countries. You know, these countries have only had their independence for so long, and you know, you're fighting against another sort of body institution that might look stable. I mean, you don't really know what's happening behind closed doors. So these people are building their equity, building their client, their audience. You know, you really have to give them a chance, and it does take work to do that. You know, other institutions have operated for hundreds or at least 100 years, and this Black institution has only been around for 10 years. Like, give them space, give them time. It takes time.
Thank you, Melissa. Curtis, were you gonna jump in next?
Yeah. I think someone was saying earlier about how, you know, cinema is kind of like the seventh art, right? And I think sometimes that is the hurdle that certain Black, even philanthropy communities, don't really embrace cinema as an art, don't really embrace film as an art. And I think that really can be an issue, or I should say has been an issue with us too, as far as, you know, really generating the people who are able to help sustain us, you know. but it is doable. Finding those core people to help spread the word about who you are is very difficult work, but is doable, I will say. So it's really about finding those core people to trust.
Thank you, Curtis. Harrison, any very quick last thoughts? We're gonna wrap up, but just wanted to make sure you had the final word.
Yes, you just be really surprised at how much generative support you can get in community. I think we always look for dollars outside. We see a lot of support with small donations, reoccurring donations. We have people that say, I'm not going to give you a biggest donation, but I'm going to give all the time. And so I would say look within too for some of that support.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you so much, Curtis. Thank you so much, Harrison. I am such a big fan of all the work that you're doing. Please continue doing it. You're doing such incredible, vital, important work, and I'm so grateful for the work that you are all doing. I want to thank all three of you for an eye-opening discussion on not just the challenges exhibitors face, but also the opportunities abound. And if we can connect the dots between the filmmakers and the myriad homes for their films, that is a wonderful thing. We want to connect the dots between filmmakers and the myriad homes for their films. To learn more about Firelight Media and our panelists, and to see more Beyond Resilience conversations like this one, visit Firelight Media TV, and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all. Thank you, audience, so much for being here. I'm Jessica Green. Goodbye, and thank you.